Do you ever wonder why certain videos or TV commercials emotionally connect with you? One powerful element that's often used is emotionally compelling background or foreground music. Hello everybody, my name is Kevin Ferguson, president of KF Brand Studios, where we make videos that help brands articulate why they do business. Welcome to our YouTube channel. In this episode, you will hear about powerful techniques in using music and brand videos to help connect with your audience, from a storyteller and sound designer who once worked for PDI DreamWorks, where he helped train animators working on blockbuster movies like Shrek and Ants. As an audio branding consultant and sound designer, his clients have included Amazon, American Express, AT&T Wireless, among many others. His name is Nick Thomas. Stay tuned.
I think most people are conscious that music does affect our emotions. I think it's the degree to which it affects us and the fact that it can affect us subliminally that I think a lot of people aren't so aware of. We study with music, we work out with music, and we fall in love with music. You have to learn to read in order to understand a written communication, right? But with music, you don't have to learn to read music in order to feel affected by the emotion of that music. So in a way, it's like music short circuits that logical processing part of our brain, and we just receive it and feel it. And in that sense, we don't necessarily have as much control over our response to it as we think we actually do. The key is when you're writing a script, you have the freedom with the words to pick and choose the emotions that you want to bring out in that script. Music is a tool that you can bring in to amplify and enhance certain of those emotions so that you have a greater effect with those particular emotions. Within a branded video, of course, you have a brand, and a brand has attributes. And what we want is we want the viewer to connect with that brand and to connect with those attributes. That connection can happen on different levels. Music is a tool to help that connection happen at an emotional level, right? So when we think about, for instance, in films, we can get to see music being used as a tool to enhance the emotions of scenes. Any scene can be made more somber, more ominous, foreboding, happy, offbeat, quirky, funny, majestic. There are so many different ways music can affect a scene. And actually, in fact, it's interesting, it's quite educational. If you go on YouTube, there's a whole bunch of videos out there, famous scenes from movies like Star Wars, where people have just removed the music altogether, or they've added another, really crazy choice. And when you watch those videos, it's still the same photography, it's still the same amazing acting and effects, but with the music missing, it's a whole dimension that's gone in your experience of those scenes. It kind of collapses. That's the power of the music. That's the power it's bringing through that emotion. And that's what you're trying to bring with the branded video. In terms of music and branding, there are a couple of other examples I would say that are interesting. There was a study I heard about where it turns out that people buy more French wine when French music is playing in the wine section. And by French music, I mean anything with an accordion in it, right? And so, it's a cliche, but we have this thing with an accordion, we think France, and we're moved to make a buying decision. That's all driven by emotions. But at the same time, we can use music to cut across all cultures. So you can imagine that you've taken a vacation, you've gone somewhere, a foreign land where you don't speak the language, you forgot to learn it before you went. You're sitting in this restaurant, this language is going on around you, you don't know what's happening, the radio's playing, there's somebody speaking on the radio in this language, and then they stop and you hear the Intel logo. And in that moment, you are oriented to a brand. Despite being in this foreign environment, everything about that brand comes to you in that instance, right? That's really what you're aiming for with music. That's the power that it can bring. So I think the way to think about this is in terms of getting a suit. You can go and buy a suit off the shelf and it might fit you pretty well. Or you can actually hire a tailor who can custom make that suit precisely to your shape. And in some respects, it's the same thing with your video, right? Your video is going to have a length. It might be 15 seconds or 30 seconds long, or it might be 2 minutes 43 seconds long, right? But it's a very precise length. There's a certain tempo that you've edited the picture to. There might be certain hits along the way that you'd really like the music to amplify. And there's also this emotional arc that we talked about earlier, this sort of contour that's going along. These three things, length, cut, and the emotions. It's going to be very difficult to sort of take a piece of music off the shelf and have it match that length precisely and line up precisely with your cuts and give you exactly the emotions you want. By hiring a composer, you get to bring somebody on board the project who can then customize your fit precisely for you. They can customize the length, they can change the tempo, have a tempo map that lines up with all of your hit points, matches the tempo of your cuts. And most importantly, of course, you can sit and together figure out precisely the emotions that you want to bring out from that script and have that in the music. So I think the best way to answer that question is really to think about, you have a soundtrack, and in that soundtrack, you want to have your listener or the viewer focused on one thing, right? It needs to be clear. If you have multiple things in the soundtrack that are all vying for attention, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be confusing. You really need to have one thing clear. So, you know, when you're making a pop song, so much of the engineering in mixing a pop song is around making sure the vocal stands out and all of the music is there to support that vocal, right? So it is with video, and it's the same thing. If you've got a narration, a voiceover of some kind, that has to be the point of focus for the listener. They have to be able to hear what's being said. So at which point the music sort of falls out of the way, kind of fills an ancillary role, and that's what background music is for. It's like a supporting role to support some kind of other thing that's taking the listener's focus. On the other hand, you may have a video where you don't have narration, or maybe the voiceover stops and you need to have the music kind of come up to the front. At that point, you know, take on the viewer's attention. That's where you need foreground music. That's where you need to have some music which has something in it which is going to be of interest and will carry the interest and the focus forward for the rest of the video.